For 15 hours or so, I've been going through sustained torture by EA Games and their latest game, Need for Speed. Needless to say, the game looks fantastic, but the actual game design, and specifically, and what we're going to talk about in this video, the car handling, is absolutely atrocious. It's so bad, it's almost as if they've designed it to be as bad as possible. The vehicles in this game are so counterintuitive to drive, even from an arcade standpoint or a realistic standpoint. It is mind-boggling. It's genius that they've managed to produce something this bad. For example, the vehicles will randomly oversteer for no apparent reason. They'll randomly understeer for no apparent reason. They don't have particularly responsive initial input despite tweaking them. There is some tweaking and adjustments you can make. Changing tyres, adjusting the steering. Again, the car settings are actually pretty arbitrary as well, with some of them not even making logical sense, but we'll skip past that. So they're not responsive at a basic level. It's delayed, even when you're not running with VSync on and you just try and get it as good as possible. There's weird latency. The input is crazy again. I understand sometimes you have to design games with non-linear input, especially if it's designed for a game controller, because it's very hard to be precise with a tiny little nipple being fondled by your thumbs. Probably why steering wheels were invented. Oh, and the steering wheel, I couldn't get to work on the PC with the game, so that's why we haven't tried it with the steering wheel. We've tried it, I couldn't get it to work, so we'll just skip past that. But back to nipples. As I say, I understand you have to make compromises, speed-sensitive steering, non-linear input for it to be approachable with a gamepad. I perfectly understand that. There's plenty of arcade games that do that perfectly fine. What isn't acceptable are absolutely enormous dead zones in the centre of the steering that can't be tweaked by the player in game. Fortunately, we've got a Steam controller, we can tweak that, which improves things mildly, but not enough to really make things better. The overall point, though, is that it seems as if they've designed this as well as if the driver's not using an analog stick. And coincidentally, I ended up trying the game with a keyboard, and it actually plays better with a keyboard because you can just snap full lock one side to the other immediately. Not immediately, because the game filters the input still with a keyboard, but it actually plays better, more intuitively with the binary input of a keyboard. So I can only really assume that they've designed the game around someone that's had 20 litres or so of Monster Red Bull energy drink and no longer has fully functioning use of their nipple control and thumbs, and as a result are only capable of slamming the nipple left and right at full velocity, which is somewhat bizarre because there is, as I say, there's an attempt by EA or whoever designed this, whichever studio EA has trodden on to design this game. There's an attempt there to actually have somewhat deep car mechanics, and this is what's so frustrating, is that you have an underlying physics engine that's arbitrary and probably badly implemented, but there is the potential that this could have had somewhat deep, approachable physics that would have been really enjoyable and really fun to actually master. And the actual structure of the game tries to emphasise car handling and drifting and doing all these different things and setting up your car different to get different things out of it, when ultimately it's all pretty much pointless, because you might as well just drive in a straight line, slam on your handbrake, this is for drift, slam on your handbrake and just get it into the bait drift mode, and then wiggle your steering wheel left and right, and that'll do a drift. Completely unsatisfying. And then when it comes to the basic driving and racing, you might as well just completely set the car up as dull as possible, complete understeer, and again when you come to a corner, slam on your brake, do a bit of a skid, and that will get you through the entire game with every single car, with no subtlety and no real reward in terms of mastering the car handling. Because if you do try and actually master the car handling, it's like someone dropping in an Enigma machine on your lap and going, work it out. Work it out. You're not even allowed a code breaking computer for this. You've just got to work out the handling by yourself now before the end of the war. Go and enjoy it whilst watching really irritating cutscenes with some of the most annoying dude bros you've ever witnessed in video game history. All said though, and what really surprises me is that games on console have been going in this direction, where instead of doing really precise, defined, rewarding arcade input, they've still got a bit of depth there, like Trackmania, Split Second, even Ridge Racer, which is very arcadey in its sort of immediate drift, and the physics make absolutely no sense in Ridge Racer. Absolutely fantastic fun, really rewarding to do perfect corners on it. Mario Kart 8, somewhat slow and the tracks are 4 miles wide, but the drifting and the input and the design of the levels make it really rewarding. If you're a skilled player and you put time into it, it's very tricky to be precise, but it's consistent and it's really rewarding to get fast lap times in that game or beat people online. Absolutely incredible. So I don't know what's gone on with EA with this title and the handling and console games that are going in this direction. Maybe I think what might have happened is that they've seen games like Forza, which has underneath it a relatively complex physics engine, and obviously there's a market for that. People sort of like the idea that the cars are realistic, but they don't actually want realistic handling cars because it's very hard to drive a realistic handling car with a gamepad. And as a result, you end up with this murky simcade thing where it pretends and is marketed as being realistic, but in reality it's the worst of both worlds. It's neither arcade, solid arcade, and it's neither realistic. It's just an arbitrary in-between of whatever the designer has and the team that puts together handling has decided to do. So all said and done, I have to congratulate EA on producing what is, in my opinion, the absolute worst handling driving game in the history. Actually, to be fair, it's not the worst. I'm sure there are worse games, but of AAA heavily marketed and contemporary driving games, this has to be the worst, the absolute worst handling driving game I've played. Well done, and I'm so glad I don't really have to play this game anymore. And really, that is the nice thing with games now. There's so many games coming out. There's so many fantastic arcade games. There's so many fantastic simulators that you don't have to subject yourself to games. It's not like the 90s where whoever was so desperate for anything that moved on a TV would captivate. It was fantastic. Instead, now there is the choice. So if you wanted to try it out, try the EA Access. You're paying $3.99 effectively for a demo, but they do have some other games on there, some of which are alright and might tickle your fancy. And so you can get 10 hours of the game, get an idea of it, and maybe you can crack the enigma and work for the British government. I'm sure that's what happens when you learn how to drive the cars well in Need for Speed. But that's the end of this video. I'll probably do another video on this game. I have to. I've been tortured, and when I've been tortured I feel like making videos about it. Don't forget to subscribe, like and all that business. You have to say that at the end of a YouTube video, otherwise the YouTube police come and kneecap you. So goodbye everybody. I'll see you in the next video we do, and we'll also be of course live streaming on Tuesday and Wednesdays at 8 PM. Bye bye.